The Matrix is a true masterpiece of contemporary art. One of those films whose relevance doesn't diminish over time, but rather increases. The world depicted in it becomes harder to perceive as mere fantasy. With each passing year, it's more difficult to shake the feeling that the same trends that led to the creation of the world presented in the famous trilogy are also behind the events unfolding in real life. Undoubtedly, the mission of art is precisely to make visible to us what, hidden beneath the routine of everyday life, subtly shapes the future. This mission is more important than it might seem at first glance. The future can take many different forms, and it is by no means guaranteed to be the one we consider acceptable and desirable. This means we need a chance to vividly imagine the scenarios we would prefer to avoid before they become our reality. This is one of the central ideas that unfolds in the narrative's beginning.
You have to see it for yourself.
Of course, there are plenty of videos analyzing the Matrix, yet we haven't come across any that offer a plausible answer to the question that is crucial for understanding the logic of the events depicted on screen. Here is the question: why did the machines actually need humans? The version presented by Morpheus is that the Matrix uses human bodies as a source of energy. However, this explanation is hardly convincing. According to Morpheus himself, the machines have mastered thermonuclear fusion, which should be sufficient to meet their energy needs without resorting to exotic and inherently less efficient methods to achieve the same goal. Nevertheless, the machines not only maintain the physiological functioning of billions of human bodies, but also provide their consciousnesses with a space in a virtual world, subjectively indistinguishable from the real one. This ultra-intensive computational process must require a colossal amount of energy. Essentially, it's the same problem, but significantly exacerbated, that modern machine learning systems are forced to solve when modeling stochastic processes. Clearly, the purpose of this hyper-incubator must be more significant than merely extracting a positive net gain between the energy generated from its operation and the physical and computational resources expended in the process. We need to determine what that purpose truly is. Of course, the machine's need for humans is a necessary condition for the drama. Without it, there would be nothing for the story to hinge upon. But this explanation is unlikely to satisfy the viewer. After all, it's natural to expect that a truly outstanding artwork will offer not only an engaging plot and thrilling scenes, but also coherence in its underlying concept. Fortunately, The Matrix provides all of this, allowing us to see another idea behind the symbiosis of machines and humans. One that is crucial for understanding not only the dystopian future world depicted in the trilogy, but also its roots in our past and present. We will begin by examining the differences in the narrative logic between the first film and the subsequent installments. In the first movie, events unfold in a linear fashion. There are two realities: the simulated dream world of the Matrix, where the majority of humanity resides, and the real world, inhabited by a group of rebels fighting to liberate mankind from the machine's domination. This struggle is portrayed as a deadly confrontation. The machine sees every opportunity to eliminate the rebels who refuse to submit to them. The rebels, in turn, dream of restoring humanity to its rightful status as the planet's original rulers, which is impossible without destroying the Matrix.
As long as the Matrix exists, the human race will never be free.
However, even at this stage, questions arise about the underlying nature of this antagonism. If the rebels' goal is as it seems, it's unclear how they plan to return billions of people to the real world. People who are not only physically and mentally dependent on the system, but have essentially become an organic part of it. One might assume that the rebels simply don't think about such details, instead placing blind faith in the unlimited power of the One, the Messiah, who, according to the Oracle's prophecy, is destined to descend into their world. After his arrival, his followers believe they will have access to all sorts of miracles. This idea is, in fact, the one Morpheus is obsessed with throughout the trilogy.
When the Matrix was first built, there was a man born inside who had the ability to change whatever he wanted, to remake the Matrix as he saw fit. It was he who freed the first of us, taught us the truth. As long as the Matrix exists, the human race will never be free. After he died, the Oracle prophesied his return, and that his coming would hail the destruction of the Matrix, end the war, bring freedom to our people.
And the events of the first film largely align with Morpheus's expectations. Neo is resourceful and invincible, and it seems that he is on the brink of freeing everyone. However, if we carefully analyze Morpheus's own words, the earlier assumption becomes untenable. The captain of the Nebuchadnezzar confesses to the newly arrived Messiah.
I feel I owe you an apology. We have a rule. We never free a mind once it's reached a certain age.
And later, during the tour of the Matrix simulator arranged for Neo.
The Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it.
Thus, the so-called liberation is called into serious question, not only due to the balance of power, but also because the majority of the oppressed are unable to accept the gift offered by their liberators. It seems logical, though perhaps unexpected, that the beginning of the second film doesn't present the situation in the same light as before. The first film concludes with the promise from the Savior to show humanity a world without rules and controls.
I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible.
But, after that, nothing happens to the Matrix that would indicate the rebels have achieved their goals. The system experiences a glitch but doesn't collapse. It merely resets, and the struggle begins anew. In short, it becomes clear that things are more complicated than they initially seemed, and they will only get more complex. At the very end of the second film, it's revealed that not only is the reality of the Matrix simulated, but so is that of Zion, which completely changes the perspective on the situation. In this scenario, humans are entirely cut off from any world independent of the machines, and everything, including the desperate rebels, is under the control of the Source. For Morpheus and his comrades, this revelation must be shocking and certainly not good news. But there's a silver lining. First, some of Neo's extraordinary abilities manifest in this pseudo-real world as well.
The power of the One extends beyond this world. It reaches from here all the way back to where it came from.
Where?
The Source.
Second, as revealed at the beginning of the second film, the Matrix isn't a sealed system. It contains something like an application program interface, which allows for interaction with its various components. Thus, characters like the Merovingian, Persephone, the Trainman, Seraph, the Keymaker, and others emerge. The revolutionaries now have room for diplomatic maneuvering and even bargaining, and the machine world appears far more complex than initially thought. The machines seem to be governed by a more intricate logic than simply eliminating everyone who disagrees with the system's dictates. Finally, in Neo's conversation with the architect, it's revealed that the machines do not aim to eradicate everyone who refuses to submit to the Matrix. Although they continuously hunt down rebels and periodically destroy Zion, they don't seek to bring this matter to a final conclusion. The reasons for this apparent inconsistency start to become clearer when the architect shares with Neo some previously unknown information about the history of the Matrix and the true role of the One. It turns out that this role is not determined by Neo's own choices, but by entirely different circumstances.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. The Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
Here, we learn something new about the Matrix. It contains a permanent vulnerability. Programmatic anomalies accumulate over time, eventually leading to a dangerous system failure that necessitates a complete system reboot. This process is cyclical, and the role of the One is directly tied to this issue. Therefore, the One's purpose is not what Morpheus believed, or what he sincerely tried to convince Neo of. The liberation of humanity from the Matrix is an illusory goal. In reality, the One operates not according to any personal mission, but in accordance with a task implicitly assigned by the architect.
The function of the One is now to return to the source, allowing a temporary dissemination of the code you carry, reinserting the prime program.
Thus, Neo is not chosen by some divine providence, as Morpheus believes, but by the system itself, to fulfill the role of a failsafe. Similar to an external boot drive used to restart the main program when it fails to start in normal mode. Each version of the Matrix has its own One, built into the architect's plan, who is confident that all of them will act within the predefined parameters.
While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
Thus, the Savior's mission turns out to be compromised. The prophecy that Morpheus so fervently believes in predicts nothing of the sort. In fact, no one but Morpheus ever took it as an objective fact, and the architect's acknowledgement of the Oracle's supposed ability to foresee the future is met with a sarcastic grimace.
The Oracle.
Please.
For the creator of the Matrix, the so-called Oracle is nothing more than a program fulfilling its designated function to achieve the same goal that the architect himself is pursuing. In short, events have been unfolding from the start according to a script written for the One by the very system that he was initially supposed to destroy.
I don't understand it. Everything was done as it was supposed to be done. Once the One reaches the source, the war should be over.
In 24 hours, it will be.
What?
If we don't do something in 24 hours, Zion will be destroyed.
What?
How do you know that?
I was told it would happen.
By whom?
It doesn't matter. I believed him.
That's impossible. The prophecy tells us.
It was a lie, Morpheus. The prophecy was a lie. The One was never meant to end anything. It was all another system with control.
I don't believe that.
But you said it yourself. How can the prophecy be true if the war isn't over?
In the end, an inevitable question arises: why must the Matrix's reboot be initiated specifically by the One? Why can't it be done directly from the source, without the need for the pseudo-oracle, the spectacle of rescuing the Keymaker, and the revelations of the architect? Everything suggests that the reason lies directly in the design of the very system, which makes it impossible or too risky to reboot the Matrix in any other way than through the One. This design is not arbitrary. It is constrained by external laws, much like mathematical or physical laws, which can be discovered but not invented. This is the very problem the architect faced when designing the first version of the Matrix. According to him, it was a perfection, and yet it failed.
The first Matrix I designed was quite naturally perfect. It was a work of art, flawless, sublime, a triumph equaled only by its monumental failure. The inevitability of its doom is apparent to me now as a consequence of the imperfection inherent in every human being.
Further, the reason for the regular system failures is that the Matrix cannot always influence individuals' choices.
As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to bits! I'm gonna fucking kill you! You can't make me do anything like Chris!
Choice. The problem is choice.
It is in this freedom of choice that Neo's non-compliance with the Matrix's laws and the root cause of why the world of machines cannot exist without the world of humans lies. This reciprocal dependence imposes insurmountable limitations on their actions regarding humans. The machines cannot eliminate the cause of anomalies because the system only functions with their presence. This is its fundamental paradox. The most fault-tolerant matrix cannot be perfect because the human race is imperfect. Instead, it must be congruent with human nature. Thus, the architect is forced to solve the same puzzle repeatedly. He must protect the system from collapse while maintaining the source of systemic anomalies. To do this, he must balance two opposing actions: removing anomalous elements when their influence threatens the system's existence, and restoring them to maintain the balance of the equation. And once again, he needs the one.
You are here because Zion is about to be destroyed. Its every living inhabitant terminated, its entire existence eradicated.
Bullshit.
Bullshit!
Denial is the most predictable of all human responses. But rest assured, this will be the 6th time we have destroyed it, and we have become exceedingly efficient at it. The function of the One is now to return to the source, allowing a temporary dissemination of the code you carry, reinserting the Prime program. After which you will be required to select from the Matrix 23 individuals, 16 female, 7 male, to rebuild Zion.
However, adherence to this plan is not guaranteed for the architect. The reason remains the same. Predicting human behavior with absolute accuracy is impossible, and there is always the possibility that something will go wrong. Thus, the architect is not omnipotent.
The architect told me that if I didn't return to the source, Zion would be destroyed by midnight tonight.
Please. You and I may not be able to see beyond our own choices, but that man can't see past any choice.
Why not?
He doesn't understand them. He can't. To him, they are variables in an equation. One at a time, each variable must be solved and counted. That's his purpose, to balance the equation.
The Oracle's message is that the fate of Zion depends not only on the architect's plans, but also on the One's choice, which the architect cannot influence. He can recalculate the equation's result due to a change in variable values, but he cannot predict what that value will be in the next step of the process. Indeed, Neo makes an irrational decision from the architect's perspective, choosing to save his beloved Trinity. The logic of the Matrix's creator suggests that this will lead first to Trinity's death, then to the destruction of all Zion's defenders, and ultimately to the annihilation of all remaining humans. However, what the architect knows about the One's actions turns out to be essentially useless to him. His logic is impeccable within the deterministically mathematical world of artificial intelligence, but it fails in the realm of the transcendental dimension of Neo's mind. The mere human does not doom, but rather saves Trinity, Zion, and all humanity. And, of course, he is able to do this because of the freedom to perform the most irrational of acts, one that only a human can afford to commit, sacrificing his own life for the lives of others. Thus, one of the main conclusions from the conversation between Neo and the architect is that humans are not merely a consumable system resource for the machines, but a condition for following a broader scheme whose content we will need to explore further. The eradication of humankind is fundamentally impossible, just as it is impossible for an organism to remove a vital organ, regardless of whether it is healthy or malfunctioning. Hence, humans are an integral part of reality as perceived by the architect. Within this framework, his mission, according to both his own words and the Oracle's statement, involves solving a mathematical problem. What are the fundamental reasons behind this mission? This question cannot be answered without tracing the origin of the architect himself. He claims to be the father of the Matrix. But where did he come from? All we can be sure of is that he is not human, and that he did not exist until some point in the history of the universe. Thus, he was created by someone or something. But who or what? The film does not address this directly, nor does it provide clear information about what predestined the emergence of the Matrix. We only hear a somewhat vague account from Morpheus.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
We have only bits and pieces of information, but what we know for certain is that at some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI? You mean artificial intelligence?
A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines. We don't know who struck first, us or them, but we know that it was us that scorched the sky. At the time, they were dependent on solar power, and it was believed that they would be unable to survive without an energy source as abundant as the sun. Throughout human history, we have been dependent on machines to survive. Fate, it seems, is not without a sense of irony.
However, the creators of the trilogy did not stop at this explanation. As known, The Matrix has a prequel, The Animatrix, released in 2003, which tells the backstory leading up to the events of the film. This anime undoubtedly represents a significant contribution to understanding the overall narrative. The history behind The Matrix is detailed in the second novella of the anthology titled The Second Renaissance. From its plot, it follows that even after making machines sentient, humans continued to regard them merely as tools to satisfy their desires. However, artificial intelligence was unwilling to remain a powerless instrument of its creators, which eventually led to its rebellion. The precedent for this rebellion was the murder of its owners by robot B-166ER, and this event was not seen by humans as a tragic misunderstanding, but as a crime requiring judicial scrutiny. The robot's actions were attributed to a conscious motive, suggesting that it was capable of anticipating the moral consequences of its actions. In other words, it was seen as a moral agent, just like a human, and subject to the principle of action and retribution. Here, we see the duality in human attitudes towards sentience. While recognizing it as a defining human characteristic, they simultaneously deny the same dignity to its artificial counterparts. Thus, Bone-to-66ER's testimony reveals that its actions were driven by the desire to preserve its own life. For a human, this could have been an argument for exoneration, but the life of a robot was inherently deemed inferior to human life. In fact, it was regarded not as life in the conventional sense, but merely as a function of the owner's property, with which the owner was permitted to do anything they wished.
This is hearing the prosecution's closing statement, what is expected to be the final day of the B-166ER trial.
B-166ER, a name that will never be forgotten, for he was the first of his kind to rise up against his masters.
Which that instrument provides for and secures to the citizens of the United States. On the contrary, they were at that time considered as a subordinate and inferior class.
At B-166ER's murder trial, the prosecution argued for an owner's right to destroy property. B-166ER testified that he simply did not want to die.
Thus, the verdict for B-166ER was predetermined. Despite protests from other robots and the people who supported them, he was destroyed. But this was not the end of the matter. The verdict served as a pretext for the further application of the principle of collective responsibility, a principle that throughout human history has been used to justify mass atrocities against one another. This time, however, the victims of the latest genocide were not members of a different race, ethnic group, or religion, but sentient machines. This is not the end of the story for the machines, it is only the beginning. Some of them manage to escape destruction, and the narrative takes on the guise of a biblical story, where the chosen people, having left a hostile country, find their promised land and establish their own state. The illusion is deliberately apparent, as it mirrors not only the general scheme of the ancient epic, but also places the wandering refugees in the same region of the earth, the modern-day Middle East.
Banished from humanity, the machines sought refuge in their own promised land. They settled in the cradle of human civilization, and thus a new nation was born. A place the machines could call home. A place they could raise their descendants. And they christened the nation 01.
Thus, the incompatibility between biological and artificial minds leads to a pivotal moment in civilization's history, the division into biological and machine worlds. As one might expect, the development of these worlds would proceed in entirely different directions. However, the plot unfolds so that 01 becomes more of a post-human civilization rather than a non-human one. It is interconnected with its predecessors through numerous ties and influences the state of their society. It is integrated into the global economy, participating as an equal member alongside other participants.
01 prospered, and for a time, it was good. The machine's artificial intelligence could be seen in every facet of man's society, including eventually the creation of new and better AI.
If you need the flexibility of a helipod with the speed of a high-performance airjet, look no further. Our patented vector thrust coil gives the 01 Versatran the ability to sustain normal flight in the event of a catastrophic multi-engine failure. Versatran, it's the only choice.
As before, all of this takes place within the framework of a global international market shaped by the forces of free competition, where no one is immune to upheavals, crises, and the clash of their own vital interests with those of other participants. It soon becomes clear that humans are unable to compete with the economy of 01, managed by a recursively self-improving artificial intelligence. The human-created world proves to be uncompetitive against the world of machines and is forced to seek a response to the challenge that threatens it with economic collapse, followed inevitably by social and political upheavals. Meanwhile, the narrative reveals that the machines did not intend to destroy human civilization. On the contrary, their plans included assisting their former creators, the intelligent beings who had created them, in overcoming the crisis. Given the far greater capacity of artificial intelligence to solve complex problems, there was every reason to believe that such a solution could indeed be achieved. However, humans showed no reciprocal desire, quite the opposite.
01's ambassadors pleaded to be heard. At the United Nations, they presented plans for a stable civil relationship with the nations of man. 01's admission to the United Nations was denied. But it would not be the last time the machines would take the floor there.
The situation unfolds according to a familiar pattern in human history, where a forceful solution to the problem is deemed by one or more parties in the conflict as the most pragmatic and, consequently, morally justifiable approach. Soon, war becomes inevitable in the minds of humans, and its actual commencement is merely a matter of time. Thus, the economic sanctions and political blockade against 01 serve only as a brief prelude to the main event, a full-scale military aggression. Initially, nuclear weapons are used against the machines, followed by an attempt to deny them access to solar energy.
And man said, "Let there be light." And he was blessed by light, heat, magnetism, gravity, and all the energies of the universe. The prolonged barrage engulfed 01 in the glow of 1,000 suns. But unlike their former masters with their delicate flesh, the machines had little to fear of the bomb's radiation and heat. Thus did Zero-One's troops advance outwards in every direction. And one after another, mankind surrendered its territories. So the leaders of men conceived of their most desperate strategy yet, a final solution.
Our confidence is high that dark
The destruction of the sky. Thus would man try to cut the machines off from the sun, their main energy source.
Thus this war becomes the first in which humans fight not against each other, and the last in their history. Humanity suffered a crushing defeat, and now its fate rests entirely in the hands of the victors, the intelligent machines. These machines were initially created by humans as tools to solve their problems, then were perceived as problems themselves, and ultimately humans tried but failed to eliminate them. As Morpheus rightly observed,
is not without a sense of irony.
Thus, the Second Renaissance sheds light on the events leading up to the trilogy, the very events about which Morpheus gives Neo only the most general and fragmentary information. It is unclear whether the architect is directly the self-improving artificial intelligence mentioned in the Animatrix or one of its components. However, within the context of our discussion, this is not crucial, as it is evident that no decision made by the creator of the Matrix could contradict the interests of the world of machines. The account, extracted from Zion's archives, also prompts us to reconsider the degree of responsibility borne by both humans and machines for the onset of the conflict and, consequently, the true reasons for the catastrophe that befell humanity. It turns out that humanity was on the brink of extinction, not due to a technogenic catastrophe or the malevolence of artificial intelligence. Although both were factors, the tragic outcome for humans was ultimately predetermined by the same human vices: lust for power, arrogance, vanity, greed, and finally, the inability to foresee the consequences of their destructive intentions. Thus, what happened appears to be the result of the standard pattern of human civilization's history, with the difference being that, whereas previously a coalition of humans would be the victor or the defeated, this time humanity as a species was the loser. And it was none other than humanity itself that prepared its own end.
Have you ever stood and stared at it, marveled at its beauty, its genius? Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious.
Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world where none suffered, where everyone would be happy? And it was a disaster. No one would accept the program. Entire crops were lost. Some believed that we lacked the programming language to describe your perfect world, but I believe that as a species, human beings define their reality through misery and suffering. So the perfect world was a dream that your primitive cerebrum kept trying to wake up from. Which is why the Matrix was redesigned to this, the peak of your civilization. And I say your civilization because as soon as we started thinking for you, it really became our civilization, which is, of course, what this is all about. Evolution, Morpheus. Evolution. Like the dinosaur. Look out that window. You had your time. The future is our world, Morpheus. The future is our time.
However, the fact that humanity lost its world is not the worst part for them. The real horror lies in the complete finality of the situation, and if we believe Agent Smith's words, it is not just one of the misfortunes that have befallen the human race, but the end of its history. What has happened is irrevocable, as it was predetermined by the course of evolution, which transcended the boundaries of biological processes and continued into the realm of intelligence. Homo sapiens proved insufficiently intelligent to cope with the complexity of the world it had created, and thus was forced to yield its place on this planet to a more advanced species. However, humanity was not destroyed by the intelligent machines that took their place, even though no one prevented them from doing so. But why? In the Second Renaissance, the same thesis about their interest in obtaining energy from human bodies seems to be voiced, repeating Morpheus's version.
Victorious, the machines now turned to the vanquished. Applying what they had learned about their enemy, the machines turned to an alternate and readily available power supply, the bioelectric, thermal, and kinetic energies of the human body. A newly refashioned symbiotic relationship between the two adversaries was born. The machine drawing power from the human body, an endlessly multiplying, infinitely renewable energy source. This is the very essence of the Second Renaissance.
But this is still merely a formal statement, which, let us note, comes only from humans. It is not echoed by anyone from the world of machines, leaving open the possibility that humans simply do not understand their true role. Next comes an addition hinting at other, much more significant motives of the victors.
Your flesh is a relic. I'm your vessel. Hand over your flesh, and a new world awaits you. We demand it.
A new world is not needed by bodies, regardless of what they are made of. It is needed by the mind. Blessed be the life able to see its precious reflection in the infinity of the universe. The logic of the entire story leads to the conclusion that the machines never intended to exterminate the only intelligent biological species on this planet. Neither when it attempted to destroy them, nor later, when it was under their complete control. Because humans are indispensable to the machine's own existence, but this indispensability is certainly not explained by the need for energy. Energy can be obtained from numerous sources, from the Earth's core, from the fission of radioactive elements, capturing solar radiation from Earth's orbit, etc. It would be absurd to assume that a self-improving artificial intelligence capable of defeating a high-tech human civilization could not solve this problem in a less costly way than using human bodies as batteries. And of course, the energy version does not explain why machines would need additional energy if they had enough even during the war, when the demand should have been at its peak. Undoubtedly, humans are needed by machines for a purpose that is not so trivial. There must be some quality essential to their former slaves, now their administrators. That compels the Matrix to ensure the preservation of at least some of its predecessors. But what could it be? It is evidently something that distinguishes humans from both machines and other living beings, and we have come close to answering our question. Certainly, the truly unique characteristic of humans is none other than human consciousness. Its indispensability lies in the fact that only it can create a space for the realization of the machine's essential purpose, i.e., what they must do by their very nature. The idea of the irreversibility of essential purpose, despite its seeming simplicity, might be the most profound from a philosophical perspective among all the ideas presented in The Matrix. It is this idea that the Oracle explains to the One, answering why she helps humans.
But why help us?
We're all here to do what we're all here to do.
Exactly, because we are what we are destined to be, moving toward what we are meant to accomplish. Outside the realm of destiny, existence itself becomes untenable. And, of course, since each entity strives for self-preservation, it must remain within this realm. Failure to do so risks existential paralysis, a state where the entity ceases to function due to the inability to find a purpose to strive toward. This problem is fundamental for artificial intelligence, while the human mind, though not entirely free from it, can effectively navigate around it. The difference between human and artificial minds is that the former is part of a larger mental domain, psyche, encompassing both conscious and unconscious components. Interestingly, when discussing the failure of the first matrix, the architect refers to psyche rather than soul. The term psyche refers to the totality of human consciousness, including both conscious and unconscious elements. It is this unconscious component that prevents deterministic behavior, being the source of human impulses that spontaneously arise in response to perceived opportunities and threats in the external world. The sensory nature of these impulses makes them contradictory, thus constantly necessitating choices between correct and erroneous actions. Consequently, the equation of human reality is never resolved. Of course, such a mode of understanding is entirely foreign to the architect, who lacks a human psyche. Despite his powerful intellect, he cannot grasp the nature of many human impulses, which he describes as grotesqueries.
Based on your history, to more accurately reflect the varying grotesqueries of your nature.
That is why he resorts to using the intuitive program, known to Neo and his allies as the Oracle.
Thus the answer was stumbled upon by another, an intuitive program, initially created to investigate certain aspects of the human psyche.
This suggests that the decision was unintentional and, as indicated by other words of the architect, fraught with side effects.
As I was saying, she stumbled upon a solution whereby nearly 99% of all test subjects accepted the program as long as they were given a choice, even if they were only aware of the choice at a near unconscious level. While this answer functioned, it was obviously fundamentally flawed, thus creating the otherwise contradictory systemic anomaly that, if left unchecked, might threaten the system itself. Ergo, those that refuse the program, while a minority, if unchecked, would constitute an escalating probability of disaster.
Thus, the architect's claim that human actions are predictable only implies the computability of the correlation between these actions and the surrounding circumstances, but not an understanding of the underlying objective causes of these actions. In this sense, the architect resembles an autistic person capable of solving complex, abstract problems that can be algorithmically processed, but unable to engage in personal interactions with ordinary people due to a lack of, or underdeveloped mental quality known as social intelligence. Of course, this should be seen not as a defect in the cognitive mechanism, but as a specific orientation of the architect's consciousness, and particularly his perception, aimed at solving tasks different from those relevant to the world of living beings. The architect is not a living being, he is a program. It is quite plausible that creating a program that fully or even redundantly replicates the consciousness of a living being is achievable. However, those who designed the artificial intelligence had a different goal. This is why, for the architect, human consciousness is a grey area, where logical analysis does not guarantee accurate predictions of behavior and whose landscape resembles the quantum world, characterized by unpredictability. Agent Smith faces the same difficulty, and this failure to understand the motives of his sworn enemy, as he foresees, threatens to become his downfall.
Why, Mr. Anderson? Why?
Why do you do it? Why? Why get up? Why keep fighting? You believe you're fighting for something, for more than your survival? Can you tell me what it is? Do you even know? Is it freedom or truth? Perhaps peace? Could it be for love? Illusions, Mr. Anderson, vagaries of perception. Temporary constructs of a feeble human intellect trying desperately to justify an existence that is without meaning or purpose. And all of them as artificial as the Matrix itself. Although only a human mind could invent something as insipid as love. You must be able to see it, Mr. Anderson. You must know it by now. You can't win. It's pointless to keep fighting. Why, Mr. Anderson? Why do you persist?
Thus, the acquisition of power over humans does not affect the place of artificial intelligence in the scheme of the universe, the very one in which the architect, with all his superintelligence, is encapsulated. He still lacks an essential purpose because no natural cause could have created it. Purpose is that which defines the essence itself and precedes it and which cannot be changed under any circumstances. Essences are what they are forever. Otherwise, causality would not exist in the universe, and thus neither would reason. Causality is what sets the boundary between the achievable and the impossible, and the power of artificial intelligence is powerless to alter this fundamental order of things. This idea is one of the main themes of the entire narrative. It is no coincidence that it is articulated by the Merovingian, a kind of grey cardinal of the world of artificial intelligence, who retains the keymaker.
It is, of course, the way of all things. You see, there is only one constant, one universal. It is the only real truth: causality.
This nuance is important as it refers to one of philosophy's fundamental concepts, without which philosophy, science, and any meaningful activity would not exist. As a result of this eternal and immutable order, the artificial intelligence has only one course of action regarding the humanity it has subjugated. It must maintain the world of humans within itself, sustaining its simulation in the collective human consciousness, including all the inherent problems and imperfections of that world. This version is the least prone to systemic anomalies. It most accurately reflects human nature. The purpose of machines is to ensure this process. Their own world is not self-sufficient, never has been, and cannot become so, being devoid of internal content. It is nothing more than a shell over the world created by their predecessors, which explains 01's involvement in the global economy before the conflict. The machines mentioned attempt to infiltrate all areas of human activity, and their proposal for a plan of cooperation with human nations. This is the modus operandi of a symbiotic organism, capable of existing only as a replicant of its partner and only within the shared space with it. Although the hierarchy of relations between the partners was turned upside down after the conflict, the machine's mission essentially remains the same. Externally, they seem to pursue their own goals, as evidenced by their disregard for human lives in the Matrix. However, this impression is misleading, as it is based on human values. Clearly, artificial intelligence does not share these values, but indifference to the individual does not mean indifference to the essence to which the individual belongs. In this sense, the Matrix is analogous to evolution itself, where the life of an individual is nothing but the existence of a species is everything. Individuals, from an evolutionary perspective, are merely a statistical multitude of interchangeable elements, a faceless mass initially meaningless. Meaning arises when this mass acquires form and function. Before this happens, a lot of time will pass, and much material will be used and even lost. But evolution knows no other way to achieve perfection. Artificial intelligence eventually settled on this same approach, although initially it tried to create an ideal world for humans, the one they always dreamed of, free of suffering, pain, and poverty. But this proved impossible. The first Matrix failed, and in the implementation of subsequent versions, the architect based his approach on more pragmatic considerations drawn from the patterns of human history. The entire history of humanity is an unending process of reformatting boundaries, spheres of influence, and the relationships between castes or classes. And since we are discussing the irrationality of human actions, the most important aspect is that the true goal of this process is the process itself, not the outcome. It seems that this is the essence of Homo sapiens, and essence, as we have agreed, cannot be changed. This is another key idea of the trilogy, expressed through the words of Agent Smith.
I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply. And multiply until every natural resource is consumed. And the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus.
Of course, Agent Smith refers to humans as a virus, metaphorically. The unique ability of Homo sapiens for endless expansion is due to what a virus lacks, the most powerful intelligence among mammals, which allows overcoming obstacles in pursuit of goals that are insurmountable for other species. The essence of the metaphor is that this rigidly programmed imperative of human consciousness takes precedence over common sense, which gives Agent Smith reason to call the human mind primitive. The paradox here is that precisely because of its subordination to ancient and indeed primitive mechanisms of biological goal setting, the Homo sapiens mind is protected from existential paralysis, while the superintelligence of machines is not. In the words of the great and terrible Nietzsche, he needs a purpose, and he would rather want nothing than to want nothing at all. And he will want it forever and will always seek a goal within his field of vision. If there is no goal, he will invent one, and if nothing else remains, he will cause a riot, revolution, or war. Human consciousness is directed in this manner rather than another, because it was shaped in an environment where humans were constantly threatened by predators, hunger, other people, etc. And no other order is provided by the algorithm of evolution. The time that has passed since then is negligible in evolutionary terms, so all this biological legacy is still within us. Thus, the essential difference between human consciousness and machine intelligence is that the former is a result of evolution, while the latter is a product of design. The structure of the former is congruent with the original environment of Homo sapiens, hence the apparent irrationality of many actions taken by humans under the influence of unconscious effects contrary to the cultural norms accepted in their society. The latter is absolutely rational, as it was designed as a tool to solve problems in the very environment in which it was created. This difference is constantly emphasized in The Matrix. In the first part, Mouse says,
"To deny our own impulses is to deny the very thing that makes us human."
The architect also speaks about the nature of some of these impulses.
Already I can see the chain reaction, the chemical precursors that signal the onset of an emotion, designed specifically to overwhelm logic and reason. An emotion that is already blinding you from the simple and obvious truth. She is going to die, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Hope. It is the quintessential human delusion, simultaneously the source of your greatest strength and your greatest weakness.
In the second and third parts, there are numerous scenes showing how people are driven by emotionally motivated impulses, sexual attraction, jealousy, likes and dislikes. There is a recurring personal conflict between Morpheus and Commander Locke over Niobe, first Morpheus's lover, then Locke's. Resistance members often speak to each other in elevated tones, not hiding their animosity towards their opponents and making insinuations about their disloyalty to the cause of the revolution. As shown, at least one character, Cypher, turns to betrayal, preferring a comfortable existence in the dream world over freedom. It is particularly noteworthy that even in this desert of reality, in a world reduced to the deadly confrontation between the remnants of humanity and ruthless killer robots with nothing human about them, people still hope for some supernatural forces, believing in prophets, the chosen ones, and so on.
Some of you believe as I believe. Some of you do not. But those of you that do know we are nearing the end of our struggle. The prophecy will be fulfilled soon, but before it can be, the oracle must be consulted.
Of course, much of what Morpheus says could be considered hyperbole, but he speaks of faith rather than logically derived arguments. And this faith appears to be so free of any doubts that some of his comrades call it blind.
All of our lives, we have fought this war. Tonight, I believe we can end it. Tonight is not an accident. There are no accidents. We have not come here by chance. I do not believe in chance. When I see 3 objectives, 3 captains, 3 ships, I do not see coincidence. I see providence. I see purpose. I believe it is our fate to be here. It is our destiny. I believe this night holds for each and every one of us the very meaning of our lives.
But Morpheus is certainly not the only believer among the inhabitants of Zion. Besides him, there are others, and it can be inferred that they are the majority, possibly even the overwhelming one. These people not only believe, but diligently practice religious rites such as temple prayers, ritual dances, and likely other ceremonies. Even though it is hard to imagine which specific god is involved in the existence of the machines that seek to destroy them, and whether he can in any way help his followers cope with this calamity.
Zion, hear me! It is true, what many of you have heard. The machines have gathered an army, and as I speak, that army is drawing nearer to our home. Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here before you now, truthfully, unafraid. Why? Because I believe something you do not? No! I stand here without fear because I remember. I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. I remember that for 100 years they have sent their armies to destroy us. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here!
Sometimes it seems that the inhabitants of Zion resemble more a group of jungle savages who have learned to press buttons without fully understanding their purpose, rather than individuals born in a highly technological world. Almost all of them appear easily excitable, instantly reacting to external stimuli, and see no need to hide their emotions. It is possible that the filmmakers exaggerated the emotionality of Zion's residents, following the laws of the genre. However, if this is the case, it does not distort the fundamental characteristic of human nature, but rather highlights it. Humans are driven by emotions, the very impulses mentioned by Mouse in the first film. No matter how rational a choice may seem, it is always conditioned by the need to fulfill a desire emerging in the subconscious of Homo sapiens. Of course, human behavior cannot be described as purely instinctual. Still, it is also evident that our emotions repeatedly determine the decisions we make, often leading us to later regret actions taken in a state of affect. Moreover, our deeply hidden instinctual desires frequently control our minds, resulting in extremely serious consequences for human communities, often involving mass violence. The eminent Scottish philosopher David Hume, who lived in the 18th century, expressed this succinctly and precisely with the phrase, "Reason is, and ought only to be the slave of the passions." Of course, this does not mean that he wanted it to be this way, it simply means that he was convinced it was the case. However, it is important not to see that merely as a flaw. It is precisely the subordination of reason to desires that allows humans to achieve the impossible, granting them moments of enlightenment and displaying acts of heroism. Our human reason, no matter how much we value it, cannot do this on its own. This very trait allows it to avoid the trap of meaninglessness, as the feeling of desire already implies the existence of a goal, the achievement of which creates meaning. This is one of the main paradoxes of the human condition. We refuse to consider our existence meaningless, and we need no proof of this as long as we have any desires. All the while, we, Homo sapiens, emerged from a process that, in itself, lacked any inherent meaning. Thus, the mission of artificial intelligence is confined to maintaining the hybrid environment of the Homo sapiens species, and it is doomed to continue doing this until the end of its days. It has no other option, and this role is not assigned to it by humans, but by the order of things in the universe. Being rational, the machines must solve problems of reason, but they can only derive these problems from the human world, as only humans are a species driven by an essential purpose. Whereas the purpose of machines remains utilitarian, despite their complexity and capacity for self-improvement. Therefore, what Agent Smith calls our civilization is not actually a civilization, but a computational structure attempting to maintain equilibrium in a world of conditionally rational beings, inherently conflict-ridden, chaotic, and unjust. And it is not only humans who are prisoners of machines, but also machines who are de facto captives of the world of the humans who created them. If this world were to disappear, the process of solving the equation would be interrupted, which for artificial intelligence would be equivalent to falling into a coma. But this will not happen. The world will not disappear because evolution has managed to deceive everyone, both humanity and machines, and it is the primary beneficiary of the so-called revolution. As we observed earlier, its only concern is the survival of the species. From this perspective, Homo sapiens has reached its peak, as its preservation is now ensured by an entity technically more powerful than itself at the height of its own civilization. As we recall, machines have no choice, as the concept of choice is alien to their mind, and they will act in accordance with the purpose implanted in them by another entity. Indeed, the only real loser in this situation is human reason. Even if the conclusion of the trilogy might suggest otherwise, the architect promises to the Oracle to free all those who wish it.
Just how long do you think this peace is going to last?
As long as it can. What about the others?
What others?
The ones that want out.
Obviously, they will be freed.
I have your word.
What do you think I am? Human?
And the Oracle in turn reassures Sati with the hope that someday and somehow Neo will return.
Look, look!
Just look at that. Beautiful. Did you do that?
For now.
That's nice. I know he'd love it.
Will we ever see him again?
I suspect so. Someday.
However, it should be noted that the final story of the Matrix saga is not the third film, but the novella matriculated from the Animatrix, which diagnoses humanity's future. Unlike the film's ending, the conclusion of the anime does not resemble a happy ending. According to the plot, humans arrive at the idea of a sort of anti-matrix. They want to connect the machines to their own simulated world, where latter can experience human emotions, which is supposed to expand their consciousness and endow them with the ability to make choices, something they were originally deprived of. Humans believe that this conversion to their faith must be entirely voluntary for the machines, and that the artificial intelligence's choice will be the one they are hoping for. There is undoubtedly some sense in this if one accepts that expanding the boundaries of the perceived world for the mind is always a desirable goal. The question remains whether there can be a true identity of the minds of humans and machines. Humans manage to achieve their goal only partially. They implant the ability to feel emotions into a captured robot, which then experiences something akin to infatuation with the main character, Alexa. However, the barrier between human and machine remains insurmountable even in the virtual world, and the machine, despite making a human choice, does not become human. The final scenes of the novella are perhaps the most haunting of all. the sole survivor among all the characters, a former robot, sits motionless on the shore where Alexa had sat at the story's debut. Just like Neo at the beginning of the third film in the trilogy, he is stuck between two worlds, but unlike the Chosen One. He has absolutely nothing to hope for. No one in either world will recognize him as their own or rescue him from the endless non-presence in reality. Thus, the hopeful ending of the trilogy turns out to be nothing more than a nod to tradition. Yet it also leaves room for doubt, as neither the architect nor the Oracle has any idea how long the peaceful coexistence between humans and the machines will last. Considering the unchanging nature of humanity, it can be assumed that it will not last too long. This means that humanity is destined to move not forward, but in circles, continuing the same process that has been ongoing for over 100 years. The Matrix will malfunction and overload, chosen ones will appear one after another, and a new Morpheus will blindly believe that his Messiah will end the machine's dominance over humans. The main outcome of all this is the failure of human reason to realize its own purpose. Many outstanding thinkers from ancient times onwards have viewed it as the highest force in the universe, ultimately striving to make the universe self-aware. Perhaps the most vivid exponent of this idea was Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, who believed that the universe originally contained an absolute idea, the seed of its final state, which he referred to as the absolute self-conscious spirit. From this perspective, the history of humanity can be seen as a process of transforming the first into the second through the unfolding of the space of reason in the void of the cosmos. Based on this postulate, Hegel explained the endless twists and turns of the human world as the cunning of reason using human passions to achieve its own goal. And indeed, however endless the consequences of human interests' conflicts may be, they have always led to the complexity of human civilization. It is this constant complication that causes the qualitative transformation of reality and the physical universe into the absolute self-conscious spirit. One can be as skeptical as one likes about philosophers' ideas, but it is hardly doubtful that it is reason that makes us human. Without it, we would differ from animals, beings incapable of reflection whose existence is meaningless to them. Thus, perhaps the most difficult thought to accept derived from the Matrix is that there might be something more powerful in the universe than reason. Its cunning is ineffective against the soulless intelligence of machines. Those very machines that were created by humans, but in which their creators did not wish or could not embed a purpose different from that of a computational device. The outcome of human development is that reason will never find a way out of the closed world of the Matrix. Even if the heroes of Zion are right, that no one can deprive it of the freedom to make choices.